China's premier is in Ottawa as we speak as part of an official state visit, part of an effort to boost trade ties with the world's fastest growing major economy. To talk about what's at stake for both countries, we're joined from Beijing by Ken Courtis, the chairman at Star for Investment Holdings and former chairman of Goldman Sachs Asia. Ken, good to have you with us.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Considering Mr. Trudeau has just recently come back from Beijing, do you expect any major trade deal announcements through the visit here in Ottawa?
I think that we'll see, Michael, a number of smaller announcements. And as far as the trade agreement between Canada and China that seems to be in the works, I think at most will be announced that the two countries would engage in what's called the complementarity study, which was already done, I think, in 2012 when the two countries started some discussion about free trade, but that will have to be updated. But I think there'll be agreements on a number of other areas. I think they've already announced that they're withdrawing the limits on the exports of Canadian beef that were imposed after we had this mad cow disease outbreak a few years ago. I think the canola issue will probably be resolved. I think you'll see a number of other announcements, company announcements and so on that will, again, complement the very successful trip I think that Trudeau had to Beijing.
As the world rushes to trade with China, where do you feel that we are as far as the pecking order, globally speaking?
You know, Michael, we were very high in the pecking order. The country had spent basically 15 years since Trudeau's father initiated relations with China, very carefully managing and building that relationship. And you know, with a country that has 3,000-4,000 years of history, consistency and stability and dependability and trust are sort of keys to how their entire culture works. And the last government was hot and cold, on and off, backwards, forwards, left, right. It didn't seem to have a consistent policy. And I think that really threw the Chinese off. And at the same time, our major competitors, the Americans, the Australians, the Germans, everyone else was in there fighting for market share and building relationships. So not only did we lose 10 years by sort of mismanaging the relationship, but everyone else gained on us. So I think we aren't at the same point in the pecking order that we were. If you think of it, 20 years ago, China's economy was the same size as ours. Today, their economy is 6 to 7 times bigger. So the whole scale of the relationship has also changed as a result.
I wonder if November 9th, the day after the Americans go to the polls, if it becomes President-elect Donald Trump, what that does to our relationship with China versus the Americans when it comes to that pecking order.
You know, that is a really interesting question, Michael. I have this view, not many share it, that Trump is the first major candidate to be president of the United States that's broken the mindset of the end of the Cold War. He doesn't talk about containing China. He says, look, China's going to be as big as we are. In fact, it'll be a bigger economy than America is. So it's normal, he says, that they have a big role in the world. I think the Clinton people still are locked in this idea of American exceptionalism, America the indispensable nation, that it has to dominate the Pacific and dominate the Atlantic, have a global strategy, and basically hem in China. So I think that we might be surprised if Trump is elected, how relations with China evolve over time. Maybe Trump is the type of person who could sit down with the Chinese and say, look, these are your interests, these are my interests, let's cut a deal. I think that's sort of the way he might operate.
When it comes to us and the discussions that are taking place in Ottawa today, do you expect it to focus pretty much exclusively on natural resources? It seems there's a lot of technology and clean tech being discussed when we went to Beijing.
Yeah, I think environment has become really a top priority for the Chinese, and they're scouring the world to find best practices, best technology, so they can move far away from where they are now, which is, with India, probably the most polluted major cities in the world, which is a result of their very quick industrial development at any cost. So I think there's lots of opportunity on that side. I think that some of our big engineering companies like SNC-Lavalin from Montreal has lots of stuff to offer there. It would be good if we could relaunch some of our energy initiatives with the Chinese. We did sell them 2 CANDU reactors, and I think then previous government sort of said we aren't going to develop the CANDU much further. But I think the Chinese would be very interested in seeing how we could redevelop that further. So I think that on all sides, natural resources, of course, but there are many other areas in which we can do business with the Chinese, and we have to do the business because, think of it, this year they're providing 50% of growth in the world economy, and that's not going to change next year or the year after.
Ken, we appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.